start in Portuguese. So welcome back again. We are now ready for the second part of our workshop/course. I would like to remind you all that by the end of this session, there is a photo group with our professor and all the guests. And also there will be a few small postcards by Helena Almeida at the end, at the door, as a souvenir for each of you. So please stay with us until the end, and I'll give the word back to Professor Sardo.
Okay, thank you, Margarida. Thank you very much. So let's continue the last part. I told you that we were doing two parts. The first part that was more, let's say, historical or theoretical, and the second part was more anchored in my own experience and with curatorial situations that I had. So I decided to bring two examples of two works that I've done. One in 2017 and the other one in 2018. And I brought these ones because afterwards, during the last years, I've been in Centro Cultural de Belém, where I was at the board. And so during that period, I curated one show of Berlinda de Brucker, which is an artist from Belgium, but it was I was totally concentrated in other kind of work that not curatorial work. And these two examples that I decided to bring, the reason to choose those two was because they correspond to two completely different typologies. This first is a biennial, and I'll give you the context of this biennial. And the other one was a one-person exhibition, a retrospective from the work of an artist that was not with us anymore. He died in 2013, so it was done 5 years after he passed away. Although it was also an artist, just like with Helena Almeida, an artist that I had worked a lot in the past, and I had done his previous anthological exhibition. It was done in the Gulbenkian Foundation in 1998, so it was a long time ago. So, let's talk a bit the Ano Zero biennial. So this Ano Zero biennial is a biennial in Coimbra. Coimbra, perhaps you will know where Coimbra is. Coimbra is it's a town in the center of Portugal, very much known because of the university. The university is one of the oldest universities in Europe, so it's a town that has very much rooted in the importance of the university. It has a population with very, let's say, highly educated, but somehow that high education of Coimbra doesn't correspond to a consumption of contemporary culture that you would expect from a town with that kind of population. So the biennial was established in 2015, so it was the second edition of the biennial. And the first edition of the biennial was not made in professional terms. It was like an organization committee that decided to invite lots of artists speaking works that already existed. There were no commissions of new artworks. The biennial had more than 60 artists, which is a lot, especially because Coimbra doesn't have a big I don't even say museum, a big gallery for modern and contemporary art. It just has two associations that have small spaces, although very interesting and very well managed, but which is the Circle of Visual Arts, is connected to the university, and the Center for Visual Arts, which are two different centers, small but with quite an active program. So when they asked me to do the biennial in 2017, my first task was trying to understand what kind of event made sense in a city like Coimbra. And the first idea was that we needed to have a theme, a subject, an idea that would somehow unite the different artistic projects and proposals that would appear. And that theme was, in English, was healing and repairing. So the biennial was about the idea of healing and about the idea of reparation. Reparation not in terms of compensation, which is one of the meanings of reparation, but as fixing things that are not well, like something that has a problem, repairing it, meaning fixing the problem that the thing has. It was coming from an idea of an art historian, an historian that already passed away, called Tony Judd. And Tony Judd has a book that is called Ill for the Land, so implying that the land is ill, it has a disease, and we need to do something to somehow heal it or repair it. And the biennial didn't try to be any illustration of the illnesses of the world or the possibilities of repair, but the idea was choosing artists that in one way or the other they had been working around this idea or this situation, and trying artists that configured some artistic proposals that somehow they were against the idea of radical thinking. So, one knows that the idea of, especially in the arts, one has this idea that being radical is interesting, that radicality is sexy in the arts. And what about if we think exactly the opposite? That radicality is a form of being moralist. And so trying to find artistic proposals that could be contemporary and disruptive, but they didn't want to be radical. They wanted to make bridges, any kind of bridges, interpersonal bridges, intercultural bridges. So that was the global idea. The idea was, of course, this is a kind of proposal that that is open enough to be developed through time. So it was the first thing, was the theme. The second thing was, where shall we do the biennial? If we don't have a museum, if we don't have any big gallery spaces, where shall we do the museum, the exhibition? And we began looking to see spaces in Coimbra, and at a certain moment we had access to a space in the university, which is a series of galleries in an 18th century building that belongs to the university. So we had that space, and we had a space that belongs to the town hall. Guess what, in Coimbra, an 18th century space that was the former eating room of a cloister that is not a cloister anymore. It's the town hall. It was a convent called the Convent of Santa Cruz, downtown in Coimbra. And then we needed another space. And the other space, we had a colleague, an architect, that had been working with his students. There is an architecture course in the university in Coimbra. And that colleague of us, called Nuno Grande. He was working with his students on an abandoned building, the convent of Santa Clara, which was a monastery that was up the hill in front of you have Coimbra, you have the river Mondego, and on the hill in the front, which is still Coimbra, there is these two convents, the convent of San Francisco, that was recovered to be like a congress center, and the convent of Santa Clara, that is a very big building, made in the image of the Mafra convent, with the same kind of volume, and this convent was used by the military since the beginning of the 20th century until 1990. And so the military, at the same time, they had preserved the building, but they had preserved the building in a military style, which is, so if the stairs, you know, the old stone stairs between the different floors, if they had a problem, well, we can solve it. And they put concrete. So it was a kind of preservation that was very violent to the building, but anyhow, it maintained the building standing. The thing is, it was emptied for a long time, and when we got to that monastery, we discovered that it didn't have no electricity, didn't have no water. We are talking about a global area of something like 10,000 square meters, so it's gigantic. And it was full of garbage inside, with remains of everything. And so we decided, okay, so we're going to clean just one area. It had one big area which corresponded to the dining room of the monks and the kitchens, etc. So we could use only that area. And we would just install electricity on that area. And we began with the process of cleaning the building. Well, we discovered, somehow it was a metaphor for the idea of healing. We were trying to heal a part of the building, to cure a part of the building. We understand how irresponsible we were a month after we began trying to clean the building. And then, with the development, we discovered that we were much more irresponsible than we thought. And it was a huge challenge. So I'm going to tell you. So the first part, we had a very, very tiny budget. Very tiny budget. And when I say a tiny budget, it was for the whole operation of doing the biennial, inviting artists, paying for the new works, so the commissions, the transports, insurances, cleaning of the spaces, electricity, water, restoration, the basic restoration of the spaces. We had in the overall 400,000 euros, which is nothing. Nothing in global terms, but a lot in terms of the budget for culture in a town like Coimbra. So, again, it was a curatorial exercise that demanded a permanent negotiation with the artists, with the authorities, with everybody that could contribute with work to put this exhibition together. It was like a big exercise. So when we began designing the show, we had these three places. Downtown, the place that you are seeing an image. In the center of town, the place in the university, and then the convent in the other side. Everything could be done walking. So everything was in walking distance, which was important for us. We knew that people coming from Porto or from Lisbon, they wouldn't stay in Coimbra overnight. So it was very important that people could see the exhibition arriving in the morning and seeing the exhibition till the end of the day. That was also a curatorial option. We were not making a series of small exhibitions, we were making one exhibition with projects from different artists. I'm not going to show everything, just going to show some projects and how they were developed. So, first challenge that we had was one of the artists that we invited to participate and that agreed to participate was Matt Mullican. Matt Mullican is a North American artist, and we decided with him that he was going to participate with a group of 500 drawings that he made, and those drawings were illustrations for the symbols of mankind from Jung. So he had 500 drawings, one for each page of the book, with illustrations for Jung. And this idea was central for us because somehow we talked in the morning about this German art historian called Abi Warburg. Abi Warburg had his theory of the cultural memory is very close to the theory of collective unconscious of Jung. So Jung says that we as mankind, as humanity, we share a common unconscious. We can not be aware of it, but we share it, even among totally different cultures. There are things that, as humankind, we dive into this collective unconscious. And it's what also Abi Warburg, that was very close to Jung, and they corresponded, they knew each other, what Abi Warburg thought about the cultural memory. Regardless of cultural differences, we share a common cultural memory of humankind. And so it was like the moment one of this idea of reparation and this idea of healing was, so let's begin with the common, what we have in common. And Jung, through Matt Mullican, could give us this first connection of the common between us. And so we had this room, and Matt Mullican designed these tables to have the drawings, like this. And this was the kind of spaces that we had. You know? None of the spaces had any professional lighting. Even this space that belongs to Town Hall and was more or less recovered. You see that it has the tiles on the walls. They are, well, these tiles are 17th century. There are other places where the tiles are from the 18th century and some from the 19th century. And so we had the tables with the drawings. The thing is that Matt Mullican decided that the tables, they couldn't have any protection. So the drawings were not glued to the table. They were just put there. And the tables didn't have any protection. They couldn't have a glass. They couldn't have anything because it was about frailty. It was about how fragile all this situation was. So we had to make the first decision. It was a difficult decision. Was do we want this? Do we want the risk of anything happening, a drawing being stolen, and we said yes. Well, if the artist wants it, why should we refrain? So let's do it. Knowing that we didn't have all the guards to the exhibitions were students that were hired to be in the places because we didn't have no structure. So the first thrilling moment was with Matt Mullican. And here you have a visitor seeing the drawings. And as you see, the drawings were they were not even fixed with anything because we couldn't put any glue, anything. So they were just like that on the table. It was very beautiful. It was a very sensible moment. And facing this, the tables, because this room is very, very big, we had this sculpture from a Brazilian sculptor called Paloma Bosquet. And this was another challenge, because Paloma proposed us a new sculpture that she made, and she made it in Brazil. She was not in, so she made it in Brazil. It had to be transported to Portugal. And the floor that you see there, the brown floor, it's pure wax. It's beeswax. And beeswax, as you understand, transporting beeswax is a big problem because of the changes of temperature. It could go right, it could go wrong. It went okay. And the curtains that you see, they are made of tripe from cow tripes, so from the intestines of cows. So they are super fragile, super fragile. And so everything it was like the first moment of our exhibition was this room that was all about being fragile, and demanded us this decision. I mean us, because it was a curatorial decision, of course, but it had to be done with the organization of the biennial Ano Zero. This is the other building that we had in the show. It's an artist called Gustavo Sumpta. He was doing this durational performance. It's a huge tire from a tractor, and he has this immense beam, iron beam, and he walks on top of it. And so when he walks to one side, it leans to one side. When he walks to the other side, it leans to the other side. And he was doing this performance for 3 hours, non-stop, which is a very difficult thing. It's a huge concentration. It's very unstable, the balance. And all the situation was also complex, because the weight of that beam, if it knocked the floor, this is the floor of Colégio das Artes from the Coimbra University, so it's a floor from, as a matter of fact, the floor is from the 17th century, and so we could not ruin it. So it was always a big responsibility. And then we began making a path through the show that began here in this part with the work of Jill Magid. Jill Magid, she's an artist that decided to make this very complex project. I'm going to try to explain it to you, because it's really amazing. Jill Magid, it's an artist. It's a kind of behavioral artist. So she works with social behaviors and with social conditions. And you know the architect, the Mexican architect, Barragan, Luis Barragan. Barragan is absolutely astonishing architect. But there is a very curious thing. If you go to the internet and try to see images from Luis Barragan work, you almost don't find any images. Find very, very few, and always the same. Why? Because there is one researcher that is doing the research on Barragan's work, and it's a woman. She's an historian of architecture and design and architecture, and she is married with a very rich person. He is the owner of this Swiss design company called Vitra. And when they got married, he bought the complete documentation of Barragan with all the rights, and he offered her all the memory of Barragan's work. So Mexico doesn't have a library with the documentation of Barragan's work. There is no architecture center anywhere who has this documentation. It's her that has documentation. And so this artist, Jill Madgett, she decided to ask for a meeting with this lady. And at the same time, she had a meeting with Barragan's nephew, which is this old man that is here sitting. This old man. And she convinced the nephew from Barragan of giving her the ashes of Barragan, because he was cremated, giving her the ashes of Barragan. She would bring those ashes to a company, the company that belongs to Brad Pitt, you know, that makes diamonds out of anything, compressing anything. So to do a diamond out of Barragan's ashes, to make a wedding ring with that diamond, and to go to the lady and say, so you wanted Barragan as a wedding gift, so I offer you Barragan, and you give the documentation of Barragan to the public use. So it was a behavioral performance, you know. And of course she had the meeting with the lady. The lady didn't accept. And so what she shows in the exhibition is all the story of this process of grabbing the ashes from Barragan, which is what you see on the left. Inside the ashes of Barragan was this little horse that Barragan had he loved it, so it's with the ashes inside. And she shows the ring and the diamond. And so it was the proposal of a restoration of a situation of public circulation of Barragan's work. It never happened, but the artwork is the documentation of this process and this negotiation, which was never had any result, but it's interesting as negotiation. So then we began with a tone, which was artists that are working about the work of other artists and trying to repair situations. The second room, we had Kader Attia. Kader Attia is an artist, a French Algerian artist, very important artist in France. And well, in the European context, he lives in Berlin, as a matter of fact. And he had these slides with the research that he made in the Vatican Museum. And so all the slides are from ethnographical artworks that were brought by missionaries and brought to the museum in the Vatican. And so they were taken from their context, and now they are being required to be returned to the original population. So it was about this process of returning some ethnographical memory. So it was like this. So you had the documentation that you had in the museum, and in the end, here, there was a video that you could watch with two ethnographers that were telling all the story of these pieces. Then we had the memory of another artist, which was it was a Portuguese artist and curator. As a matter of fact, in Portugal, it's a person that we have in very high consideration. It's called Ernesto de Souza. He was an artist and a curator, and he was perhaps the father of the curatorial practices in Portugal. And he has done very important exhibitions. One of them is a kind of groundbreaking exhibition in Portugal in 1977 called Alternativa Zero. And it was that exhibition where Helena Almeida had a very important participation in that exhibition in 1977. But before that, he made a fantastic show where he was recovering people that are not professional artists. They were what he called visionaries. and the works that you are seeing, it's from Franklin Vilas Boas, who was a man that lived in Vila do Conde in north of Portugal, by the sea, and he would collect pieces of wood that were there on the beach during winter, and he would dry them and make sculptures out of it, starting from the shape of those pieces of wood. The sculptures are amazing. It's like they are like these chimeric animals, the mixture of different animals. They are absolutely extraordinary. And he was comparing those sculptures with Middle Ages sculpture that are present in churches. And he was comparing those stone sculptures in the building with the kind of sculptures that Franklin Vilas Boas was doing. So at the same time was a reference to Ernesto Souza and to the relation between this non-professional artist and the memory of those artists with no name, which are the artists that have made the sculptures in cathedrals. And here we began with very interesting questions, which were, we had these ectochromes, the slides from Ernesto Souza. And we could have done a video with those images. That would be easy. Digitalize the images, the ectochromes, and do a video. But when we began putting the sculptures inside the vitrines, in the space, I decided, no, we cannot have it. Because it was not done in video. It was done as a slide show. It was called a slideshow. So it had 3 projectors and the slides. And so we had to have all the physical sensitivity of the thing. We have to have the sound of the slides entering the machine. We have to have the light going on and off. We have to have the noise of when it goes to the end exactly and it comes back again to the beginning. And all that was a time machine. We needed that time machine. If we had a video, we would lose that time machine. So it's like, for example, here in the exhibition of Helena Almeida, we'll have a problem that is a similar problem. Helena Almeida made several videos during her life. Not too many, she made 4. But in the exhibition you have 3. You have a video that was done in 1980, and you have a video from 2010 and one video from 2004. The videos from 2004 and 2010, they are projected. But the video from 1980, we could not project it. Because when Helena Almeida made that video, she never thought about projecting it because there was no technology in Portugal to project that video. So we had to get an old TV monitor to present that video. Or else, if we had it projected, we would have, it's like showing a photography of a painting instead of showing a painting, you know? So curatorially, we have to have this notion and this respect to the way how a certain technology pulls you from your daily life and connects you to a different time or to a different space. And here, we needed the sound of the slide projector. We needed that technology. It was very difficult because we need to coordinate the 3 projectors, and we only found in Portugal 2 gentlemen that were quite old, that were the only ones that knew how to do it, and it was a long process, but they managed to do it, and here it is, it was working. Jonathan Saldanha, is a performance that was in that space. And it ended, so we had this old artist called Inês Souza, already deceased, and then we had a very young artist called Henrique Pavão with a series of photographies and sculpture that he was doing through the last year before the exhibition, which is photos of the same window, which was the window of the house where he lived when he was a kid, and one day he appeared at the door of that house. He knocked on the door. There was someone who came and said, "Can I take a photo of the window where I grew up?" And they said, "Okay." So he took 36 photos, which is the number of photos that a black and white roll has. He took 36 photos and then printed the 36 photographs. And then he had a stone, which is an obsidian. It's a stone that is connected with recurrent images, recurrent happenings, and he was putting one in front of each photo. And this is Jonatas Andrade, which is a Brazilian artist that was in the same room. Well, let's go along. Then we had, in the university, we had to use these kind of auditoriums that were very formal, but they were the old chemical auditoriums of the chemical laboratories. And here we have Bulabezo Esiwani, a very important artist, African artist, that has a performance and videos from performances, and we use the auditoriums. But then we had, so this is the photo. Okay. Then we had the big space of the monastery. And that was the really complicated situation, because I'm going to change the order that I'm showing you this. So the structure of the monastery was, you had you had a ground floor and you had an upper floor. And there was, in the ground floor, there were two sides. One side with a series of rooms that were quite big, namely the old kitchen, the dining room of the monks. They were all very big rooms. And on the other side, you had a huge corridor. When I mean huge, it's 200-meter corridor, 200-meter long corridor, which is enormous. And this corridor had small rooms, and we decided, well, we are just going to use this floor. We are not using the upper floor. We don't have money to use everything, so we are just using the ground floor, and we used the corridor and the small rooms on the side of the corridor and the other easel. And at a certain moment, we begin talking with several artists. One of the artists we talked to make a commission of the work is Julião Sarmento. Julião Sarmento, Julião Sarmento died meanwhile, but he was very much alive at this moment. And he said, okay, I'm going to make a project for you. And we thought that Julião Sarmento would make a video or a series of paintings, which was the most common medium that he would use. But he returned to us and said, well, I have a project which is using the complete corridor. I said, how? And he said, well, I got this Spanish company that wants to sponsor the work. They are an electrical company. What I'm going to do is you cut completely the light on the corridor, and when you enter, you just can have two persons at a time. You enter the corridor, and there is a very tiny light that goes up on top of your head, and you give one step more, and the tiny light disappears, and there's a slightly more intense light that appears after. So it works with sensors. And you go through the corridor, and you have more light and more light and more light, and when you get to the end of the corridor, to the way out, you have 2,000 watts on your face. And we said, well, this completely changes the complete show, because we have the corridor, which was the access to the works of lots of artists in small rooms, is not access for anything. And so we just have one piece that occupies all this area, so we have to use the upper floor. And we have to have one specific direction in the visit, so people have to go through this corridor They have to go up, make the corridor on top of this, which was exactly the same size, to the other side, and come down. And we did it. We did it. The piece was too good not to be done. You know, it was so unbelievable intense. The name of the piece was Cure, and of course, it was a direction to light. I can tell you the reason. He had a very close family member that was in a very difficult situation, dying with a cancer, and he didn't know if he was surviving or not, and somehow he decided to do that piece really about the healing process, about the metaphor of light as a healing process. And so we could not say no, for all reasons. It was important for the artist, it was a wonderful piece, and we had to do it, but it completely transformed the project. So we decided to do that, and so this is you had very, very, very soft light, more and more and more intense, until the end it was this flash. And so afterwards we had to lead the people upstairs, and we had this Lucas Arruda, which is an amazing Brazilian painter. And he had this project, he had this landscape, very classical landscape. And then we had this corner where he had what you see on the wall on the right side. You see two squares of different whites. One is a white painted square, and the other one is light projected. And so it was a very subtle thing, which kind of continued Julian's piece to the next floor. We had Alexandre Estrela, who is the artist that is representing Portugal in the next Venice Biennial. And we had very young artists, Sarah Bichon and Manoir Roy. Manoir Roy is French, Sarah Bichon is Portuguese. She's one of the, let's say, in the young generation of Portuguese artists. She's now very well known. At the time, she was a totally unknown. She was a sculptor. Mar Varzanius, that she's super famous now. Also, at the time, 6 years ago, nobody knew her. And this is the kind of rooms that we had. So these rooms were the former rooms used by the military. So they had these paintings in the wall until middle. The floor was concrete. And we had to decide, well, we'll use it as it is. We don't make any transformation. We're not going to paint anything. We're not going to fight the space. We're going to just adapt what we have to show in each room. And you see, for example, in the corner of this room, there was this amount of humidity. And the piece from Arsanius was about destruction and decay. So why not? The building has a decay of its own. This is Pedro Barateiro in the corridor. See the corridor upstairs. And this is Gabriela Bergaria. I want to tell you a bit of this work by Gabriela Bergaria. Gabriela Bergaria, she's an artist, she's Portuguese, she lives in Belgium, and she works with nature. And when we invited her to participate in the project, she said, okay, there is a garden around the garden. Yeah, kind of garden around the monastery. And she said, so my participation is I'm going to clean a walk, a stroll through that garden. So nobody can walk because the grass is too high, everything is a mess. So I'm going to clean a possibility of a walk. So I'm going to build a landscape for people that can walk around. And so she gathered a group of people from university, students from art history, from architecture, and they have been cleaning the garden for a month with her. And they registered all the cleaning and everything that they collected, because it was full of remains of things, full of pieces of furniture, things that were thrown to this garden through the years. So they collect everything, they cleaned everything, and they made photos of everything that was collected, like a memory of the process of cleaning, of the process of healing. And so they made this folder, with photographs that people could take a look at. And in the end, they made a sculpture with everything they collected. As a matter of fact, it looked like a minimal sculpture when you see it from afar, because it was like a rectangular thing. It looked like a garbage Donald Judd. And suddenly, you saw that it was like a puzzle of everything that they had collected during this month in the garden. So it was a very important process, because while the other artists were appearing to make the installations, they were there collecting things and making their piece, and they were kind of a welcoming committee to the artists that were appearing to install their pieces, you know. So it was a very beautiful process. In the middle of the corridor, we had this Jimmy Durham. Jimmy Durham is an artist. I don't know if you heard about him. It was very curious, because when this biennial was happening, Jimmy Durham won the Golden Lion in the Venice Biennale for the career. Jimmy Durham was an artist with Cherokee origin, and so American, North American, totally with his personal relations cut with North America. He didn't go to North America anymore. So he, since '98, he was not going to the States. He died in Europe. He died during COVID in Europe, in Italy, where he lived, in Napoli. And Jimmy Durham had, so it's 2 videos. In one of the videos, he was singing songs that he loved. And in the other video, he was singing songs that he hated. So he was singing one song that he loved, and then one song that he hated, then one song that he loved. And it was in the corridor upstairs, so it was in the beginning of the corridor. It was divided in 2 halves. In the first half, you had always these songs by Jimmy Durham, and you had on the sides the rooms where you had installation by other artists. So I'm not going to talk about this. This is Dan Wo, a part of the Statue of Liberty. He made a replica of the Statue of Liberty in copper and in parts. And so this was a part of the Statue of Liberty. And this was the second half of the corridor. And the second half of the corridor, I didn't want to have anything material. So I talked with Dominique Gonzalez Forster. She's an artist, a French artist, but she lives between France and Brazil. And she has this sound piece. And the sound piece is, it begins with some drops of water. You hear one drop of water, another drop of water, another drop of water. And a rain begins to fall, and the rain is more and more intense, and it's a tropical rain, a very intense tropical rain. And then the tropical rain goes away, and you have a composition, musical composition, that is made with the last drops of water. And then it goes to the beginning. So you had this, you entered this part of the last part of the show, and you had this really violent tropical storm on top of you. It was incredible, because even the temperature, the sense of temperature would change. You know, when the rain, it was so intense that you would feel cold, you know, with the rain. And then after this, you entered William Kentridge piece, which was a video in 8 screens. It's a room. It was a room more or less the size of this room where we are. So you had 8 screens all around with this video, a video piece called "More Sweetly Plays the Band," and it's the kind of history of Africa told in a parade. So the parade is done with this technique that William Kentridge uses. It's he makes this kind of animation with like figures that are real, figures that are drawn. And so you had this with the sound of a band playing, and the band is this critical history of Africa, and it was the end of the show, was here. So the thing was, how can we build something that ends with an emotion that was more intense than the emotion of the Julião's Cura piece downstairs. So we were beginning with something that was emotionally so intense. How could we keep the narrative with a high intensity, of high vibration of intensity until the end? And the only possibility was ending with William Kentridge and having a non-material piece before, a piece that would give you time for speculation, would give you time. You had 100 meters of corridor to walk with a sound piece. And so you had 100 meters to walk and somehow digest what you had seen, and then you entered this piece. This piece is 14 minutes. I don't know if any of you saw this piece already, but it's amazing the quantity of people that I saw entering this room and crying, but crying convulsively, because it's so intense, so well done, so sensitive, so so sharp in the way it presents a tragical history of Africa, but with a sound that is the sound of a fanfare. You know, it's not a sound that compels you to disgrace, but the idea of disgrace is always present. You know? And so it was a very intense piece, and I'll always be thankful for William Kentridge to have put this piece there in to end this exhibition. And we had these chairs that were there in the middle, so you could grab a chair and put it wherever you wanted. You know? And so I had seen the piece for the first time in Berlin at the Martin Gropius Bau, in a retrospective of William Kentridge. And when I saw the piece, I had very little time, so I was going to see the exhibition, then I had to take the plane. And I saw the piece was 14 minutes, so I had time to see the piece from beginning to end. And I saw once, and I saw twice, and I saw 3 times. And then I had to pick a taxi immediately to the airport because I would lose the plane. Because the piece was so, it was really so, grabbed me so much that I thought, no, it's impossible not to end the exhibition with this. And so that was the final piece of the show, plus one piece that we had that was by the Portuguese artist João Onofre, and that was a sound piece for the bells of the churches in Coimbra. So there was a composition that was done for the bells of the churches in Coimbra. Coimbra has lots of churches, so we selected 4 churches. And the bells had to be tuned in a certain way. They had to be tuned in D-E-A-D, so tuned dead. And like a violin. It's like a violin when it's tuned dead. And the composition was played in the bells every morning when the exhibition's open and every evening when the exhibition's closed. So it has this announcement, this public announcement of the exhibition was opening and the public announcement that the exhibition was closing. And it was a very beautiful project to do because we understood that none of the priests of the churches use the bells anymore because they have a pre-recorded sound of bells. And we also understand that the bells were not tuned, so we hired a person that is specialized in tuning bells to tune the bells. And so it was a process of recovering, you know, also the bells of the town and having this. It was a public art piece. It was public art, open to everybody. And it was very surprising to see the reaction of people. Like, why are the bells of 4 different churches around are at the same time at 10 in the morning and 6 in the evening? Why are they playing every day? It was very, very curious. So this was the Biennale no Zero. I don't know if we'll begin with Bieberstein before a small break. Perhaps then we don't have time to a break. I don't know. What do you want to do? It's before the time. It's like 20 minutes before time, 25 minutes. I don't know. Perhaps we do now and not not to cut the Bieberstein. Hmm? Yeah, 10 minutes. 10 minutes cannot be 15 minutes. 10 minutes just to